Dying is almost always a detriment to your team in Guild Wars 2 PvP, and not always will you have your cooldowns available. Kiting, which is using your positioning to survive, is an important tool for supplementing your survivability because there are many situations where you will be outnumbered, out of cooldowns, long-winded fights, or just playing around people who counter you. If you avoid damage using your positioning, then you can effectively save yourself those cooldowns for later or to play more aggressively. Also, support skills have much wider range than damage skills, so kiting can help you lose enemies, but your allies can still provide you heals much more easily. The action combat system of Guild Wars 2 PvP means that some skills will have different ranges, and even if you cast that skill in range, there will be many other factors such as line of sight, height, and timing. And since every map is littered with terrain for you to jump on and to use to your advantage, learning the land that you will be fighting on can make a huge difference. It's like fighting on your home territory versus fighting on enemy territory. Knowing the terrain can help you survive much longer and to secure kills on others who know the terrain as well. So the goal of this video is to show all of the practical terrain you can use to kite on in PvP. Yes, there will be more spots than I show, but no one uses that super obscure kiting spot while they're being chased because there are so many factors that will interrupt really difficult spots to traverse. So in other words, I'm going to show spots that people actually use in a real game. You can think of kiting spots in 4 categories. The first is Z-axis spots, or terrain that can give you a height advantage, which makes it hard for melee attacks to land. Second is low visibility or line of sight spots, which are hard to see who you're chasing, so they're good for juking because the path you take can change faster than they can react to it. Also, they're good for avoiding projectiles or ranged skills that require line of sight. No port spots can prevent enemies with port abilities from chasing you, so they have to manually jump up with you, giving you a greater advantage against those classes where much of their damage becomes predictable when they can't port on you. And lastly, there are transition spots, which are usually one of the other types as well, but they're usually more enticing to use in rotational situations because they give you more options. Essentially, some kiting spots are dead ends, and if someone follows you up them, you have nowhere to go, which isn't conducive to sustaining your life long term. A transition spot has either other spots that you can get into nearby, or progresses you to some other location for you to disengage. So these spots are best for rotation because you waste as little time as possible moving around the map while also getting enemies off of you. You also don't want to be using the same spots over and over because that can become predictable and people will be able to stick to you when they know your kiting rotation every time. Some of these spots will be harder to get to, so when you're in combat you actually move slower, and when you have swiftness in combat you're still a little bit, but just barely slower than if you were just out of combat. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to do everything out of combat with no swiftness, and if I have to use swiftness to get to a spot, then that means that you can't just get it with swiftness in combat, and most of the time when you're doing kite spots you're going to be in combat. One final tip before we get into the specifics is that you shouldn't plan on dying, but if things end up that you're going to die anyways, you should die on the node so that you don't get bled out. If you can't survive and you can't die on a node, then you want to bring enemies as far away from the objectives as possible so that your team is outnumbered for less time. Forest of Niflhel has a beach area in between the 2 spawns, which gives access to all 3 of the nodes, which means it's very easy to rotate on this map, but hard to see the rotations because there's so much obstructions in the line of sight. So it's hard for you to see where the enemy is going, so it's important not to get isolated on this map. But if you do go into the beach area to try to cross, it can be very dangerous because it's just an open field area. So there's only one no port spot, it's these 2 rocks on both sides. These little pillars give you line of sight if you want, but yeah, it's very dangerous crossing through here because there's no terrain, so if you're outnumbered you can die very easily. This little bridge can be used to line of sight. It's very good at obstructing vision and you can change direction there. There's also this tree here which is really good at preventing melee attacks from hitting you. You want to go into the right as far as you can and then just jump straight up and hold forward. So it's just really nice for getting height advantage. Over here there's a little bit of a transition spot into like the mine from the beach, kind of like river area. Here's a nice little transition spot as well, because if you use your port, you can actually go through the waterfall here. Now, normally with a port skill that is like point to click, it's very easy to do it. But with the short bow, it's kind of weird. You have to stand like right here and then put it in as far as you can, and yeah, you can port through there. So it's a really good transition spot because it gets you through this area without people seeing you, and it's just a very quick way to, you save a lot of time. So in the courtyard area, you have these tombstones. You can just jump on each of these tombstones, and that's really good for avoiding melee attacks. This spot right here is pretty nice as well. You have to stand as far right as possible. If you try to jump from here, you won't make it. You gotta go right and then jump left, and then it's very easy to jump up here. This is a very good spot because it's hard for people to get up it if they don't know how it works, but if you know how it works, it's very easy to get up. So you can easily do that in the middle of a fight, and then you've got height advantage. They can port to you there though, so it's not that safe. You also have a little bit of line of sight behind the statue, but there's a really good no port and a height advantage if you jump on top of the statue, which has a higher, pretty wide hitbox. And going into mid, you have this little signpost which you can jump on. You need a lot of swiftness to get in this. And then you can jump over here, and then if you look at this little ledge right here, you can see the lowest point. You jump to the lowest point and then you can get higher. When you go into mid over here, there is a little bit of a rock area here which gives you some height advantage, which you can use to avoid melee attacks. There is of course the pedestals over here, which gives you access to up top here, which is not a no port spot. You can port everywhere here. And these little cubby holes are nice for line of sight, and this statue as well. And over here there's a pillar. So this pillar is really good because this area has almost no like terrain over here. So if you are like trying to go through here, this is like the first spot that you have. So I often use this spot, and I use it kind of like those gravestones. I just jump on top of it and I try to heal myself if that's what they're chasing me on. And there's also a pillar over here which can give you the same effect where you just jump on it and it's hard for melee attacks to hit you unless they actually stand on top of it with you. There's also a little rock here. It's a little bit hard to get on. You have to look for this little recess here in it, and then you land on top of that, and then you can get up here. There's also a port spot in the mid from below here. You got to port to this little area. It's usually no valid path, but if you do it right there, depends on the angling, and then you can do it from the other side as well. So that's good for porting classes to be a little bit more mobile. So let's go into the mine node. You have over here is the height advantage from the tree. And if you're being spawn camped, you can jump on these rocks over here. Usually this is very safe because it gives you such a height advantage and people can't really port to you here. Also over here, you can climb the vertex of this rock to get into the mine node. This scaffolding is a very important kite spot. It's used by almost everyone. So it's also a very complex spot. So there's quite a few entrances to it. So you have over here, just run into the exact corner and then just jump up. And then you can go down here and jump on this lip and then jump up. There's obviously the stairs here. Or you can jump over here and then get over the fence. There is down below here, you can run through these rocks, which is really good line of sight, and like you can juke people because you can, like if they're chasing you through here, then like as soon as you go under this, like you see how your camera changes view. So usually people go to the right when they go through here and come up here, But if you go to the left instead and you come out here and then go up here, it's kind of like a, yeah, you can juke people a lot with that because they don't know which way you're going. You can go around this rock as well. It's kind of a dead end though. It'll take you to mid, but otherwise, yeah, it's not an amazing spot. You have this rock over here, which is pretty nice too, just for the height advantage, and it's a pretty safe line of sight as well. This rubble here, I like to stand on because it's really close to the node, and you can like kite someone and avoid melee attacks, and then immediately contest the node right after, so it's a pretty safe spot. Back here, you have a really good like line of sight and a they can't see what you're doing, sort of like over here. You go back here and then someone follows you back here, then you can do like a double back and just leave it, and they can't really see that you did that immediately. Back here you have this rubble you can just jump on to get up here, or go the long way, and then you can jump on this pillar and then jump to this log, which is really just kind of like you're a sitting duck if they have projectiles, but it's really good if they are like a melee class because they can't get to you. This spot is actually pretty good because it's like the opposite of the log. You're very safe to projectiles because no one can shoot you in here, but you're very weak to melee attacks. So depending on what you're getting chased by, you either want to go up here for avoiding melee, or you want to go down here for avoiding projectiles. And there's also a little bit of a spot over here where you can jump on these ice shards. I don't really like to use this because it's it doesn't really do so much for how difficult it is, and it's really not by any nodes or anything, so it's not too useful in my opinion. But it is there. You can jump on these ice shards, and then you can like get stuck in there, so I don't really like the spot. Then when you head back into mid, there are these rocks. Rocks you can just use as like a height advantage. There are rocks on this side and you can jump on them, but there are no rocks on the other side. So this is the safer way to go to mid, is from the back of the mine. The back of the henge is just trees, which you can use as line of sight. And then over here you have the henge, which is by the chieftain. Chieftain can make things kind of messy. So if you can get on top of this henge, so you want to go to the left side as high as possible and then jump right, if I can get that. So go as far left and then jump right, and then you go up to the top, and then you can even jump to the other one from here, and that's pretty nice and safe. No one's going to chase you here, but it's not really near any nodes, so I don't really use that very much. At the henge though, there's quite a bit of kiting here as well. So you have this little rock here, which you can jump up the vertex, and that will give you this kind of like a good transition spot. So this is kind of like a very low visibility spot, which is nice because there's options as well. So you can go up the visibility spot, and if they chase you up it, and then you decide to go left, and they might think you're going left, well then you can go right and maybe juke them, and there's options. So it's a really good spot right here. And jumping on top of this little thing allows you to transition to this spot as well, which gives you pretty much no port. All of this area is very hard to port to, so if you look here, I can port here, but I cannot port here, so it's kind of weird. Like, gives you, well, I can port there for some reason. Usually it gives me no valid path. Like if I try to port over here, well, it's kind of weird sometimes, but yeah, usually it's hard to port up there. So how you get up there is you put your nose into this corner, face exactly into the corner, and jump up. Or you can go around the back here, and you jump into the middle, and then you jump to the right, and then you can get on top here. And then over here it's pretty nice because there's a lot of line of sight, low visibility, and there's also no melee spots here. If you jump into this tree, there's a little stone there, and then from there you can use a leap skill to get over here. At this point you're pretty safe, but if you really want to get obscure, you can go on top of the henge post, and you can actually like range people on the node from a really safe spot. So that's pretty nice. And then here's a really good spot. So this is a pretty difficult spot to do if you don't know how it works, but all you gotta do is just, to learn it, you just go in as far as you can until you start slipping. So I just slipped, and then you correct by moving as far up as possible, which will take you back a little bit, but you want to be as high as possible because the jump relies on height more so than the distance towards the spot. And yeah, you just go in, slip, correct, jump, and then it's such an easy spot. And then you can go up here, and it's very good line of sight. It's super safe. You lose a lot of people on this spot, and they won't chase you here. And if they do, then you can go back there, and it's got a lot of other stuff. So this is a very safe kiting spot because there's so much line of sight over here. Also, you have this little rock here, which allows you to go up here, and yeah, you can transition from this to this, and then from this to over here, which is, yeah, it's just a really good safe kiting spot area. So yeah, Henge is very safe. And that's pretty much Forest. So here's a situation. I'm going into a lost team fight, and I poured up to mid to try to salvage any of my teammates from dying. I see that there's a lot of damage on my thief here, and I'm trying to heal them, but I get jumped on by a hammer warrior, so I'm stun locked. And at this point, I want to survive this warrior, so I go up and down the Z axis here, and there's also a guardian on me, both melee classes, so I keep using the height advantage over here on this terrain to survive while I'm healing myself. But I can't just stand on those because they'll eventually get to me. So I jump up and down on these tombstones, and I actually avoid an arcing slice because of that. But now the mesmer's on me, and I am going to die unless I go through the waterfall here with a blink. And because that transition spot is so quick, it allows me to get into far, and I can actually get this decap in basically a 1v2 plus on the map. That's how many people were chasing me. So at this point, I've got the decap. So now I should go back and regroup with my team. And yeah, that just shows how you can survive so well with kiting on this map. So if you like these videos and you want more, give it a like and subscribe. And check out the playlist in the description for all the other maps.